Get a couple of details out of what we're going to talk about today. Today we're going to talk about soul, but there's more than one kind of soul. So I want to talk about old school soul and new school soul. And one of our primary focuses is going to be on Aretha Franklin, and then we're going to go down the food chain of other people. And by the way, for the record, Aretha was one of my all-time favorite soul singers, and I want to share with you why that is in a minute. But as we're getting started, I'd just like to kind of get a shout out of where people are coming from around the world. So if you guys want to just let me know what's going on. I do want to say another thing too. When Aretha passed, it literally, a part of me died. I know that sounds weird, but it's sort of like, I don't know if you've ever had an icon or someone that's really been inspirational to you, and then they pass and you're like, wow, okay, so that was the total sum of everything they had to say. And that could be spiritually, that could be musically, that could be whatever it is, that turns your crank. But for me, Aretha was just, I am not worthy, And I remember just growing up as a kid, and I was a closet R&B lover because I was in the rock world, and everybody in the rock world was like, ooh, no disco, or ooh, no soul. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's kind of weird because I'm going to talk about a few of the rock guys that have been influenced by her, and it's weird how we compartmentalize certain genres and things and whatever. But so as we're getting started, if you guys could give me a couple of shout outs where you're tuning in from, that'd be awesome. So again, I'm going to recap. So today we're going to talk about soul. Now there is old school R&B soul, and there's more of a new school R&B soul. There's not really a name for that, but I'm calling it that. And they both are pretty different, and I'm going to explain why in a second. And by the way, I'm not looking to diss anybody or anything like that. I'm just juxtaposing, which means showing you the difference between one era and another era. Okay, and so Aretha was one of the ones, in fact, being dubbed the Queen of Soul. This gal had 20 #1 hits. Think about that, 20 #1 hits. She had 18 Grammy Awards. 18. Can you imagine walking up to that podium 18 times? I just wanted to walk up there once, walking up there 18 times. Became the first female inducted into the Rock Hall of Fame. Isn't that interesting? Her career spanned 5 decades with her first #1 in 1967, which Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You. And the reason that I find that so interesting is that it's sort of like, what was the gal that was sat in the back of the bus and in the front of the bus and refused to go to the back of the bus? She was that kind of put it out there kind of gal. But what I want, and also I'm going to talk about her instrumental part of her life as well. But I want to get into a few things here, and we have a lot of ground I'd like to cover. So if you guys are down for this, I hope you're along for the ride, and I hope that you can really absorb all this information. But the first thing is that in old school R&B and soul, it wasn't about the vocal calisthenics. Yeah, all this crazy stuff, the melisma stuff. It was really more about the slavery era, and sharing your story, and it was really just the pain of I forget who said this. I think it was Al Jolson. I might be wrong. Don't quote me on this, but blues ain't nothing but a good man feeling real bad. And why I find that interesting is soul is very similar, and it's just a pouring out of the soul, right? And then we communicate that through articulate that through our singing. So there's a couple things. First thing about Aretha is by the way, can you bring this up higher, because I need to get my other notes. When I first heard Aretha, and I was a rock guy, I thought to myself, that's scary. She's that good. Okay, that's weird, because I was listening to Steven Tyler, and I was listening to, Lou Gramm, like way back in the day. And then I was trying to get my brain around how it was that she had such a smooth tone, and her tone increased over the years in amazing ways. which is another point I hope I get the chance to talk to you about. But I have a Bob. I have an assistant named Bob. Bob, I hope you put in the description. Ain't no way. Don't play that song for me. You lied. It won't be long. Change is going to come. All these different things. So I have these different songs of mine that I loved by her that she did. But here's the biggest point I want to make about the first part of this webinar. Is that there's two camps of soul. The first camp was to tell a story with some blues in between. That's why it was called blues R&B. If you go to Billboard charts, you'll go back and you'll see it didn't used to just be called R&B. It was called blues R&B. Okay. Now R&B means rhythm and blues, and soul was a derivation of that, or co-participant of that. Well, what I gained from that was that telling the story was much more important than a bunch of licks. And so I'm going to go down a bunch. Oh, we got some shout-outs. Okay, so let's get some shout-outs going here. I'll pause for a second on that. So hold that thought. There's two camps of our soul. We're going to cover that right now. Sam Hunter from Scotland. Good Sam. Art TDX Uhai from Bangladesh. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Marco Garcesh from Peru, sorry. Mark Obale, all the way from India, nice, that's killer. We have Abe from India, that's awesome. Cristiano from Everton. Oh, Everton as in England, okay, awesome. Everton from Brazil, Sao Paulo. There's an Everton in England too, by the way. We've got Jay from Tampa, Florida. All right, you're all the way from Tampa, that's good. Anyway, all right, so as we go through some of this, and thank you for the shout-outs, guys. I want you guys to really get your brain around something. And I actually think this is really important. When we sing, we think that it's all about maybe hitting a high note. Or we think that it's all about maybe distortion. Or we think it may be all about, some blues lick, right? And what is so interesting to me is that, and why this thing I wanted to share with you, starting with Aretha, is that for her, it was just life. And she just shared life. She was just talking about life and stories in her heart and whatever. Now, what made Aretha so exceptional was she was an exceptional musician as well. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be an exceptional musician just to be able to be a singer, on the one hand, but it doesn't hurt on the other hand. So why I bring that up is that as we go through, we're going to walk through a bunch of different artists. I want to explain them one at a time. She was deemed the Queen of Soul, okay? Well, she deserves the title. And in juxtaposition, again, to show you the difference between one and the other, as much as I venerate Mariah Carey wasn't deemed the Queen of Soul. She was called the Songbird. I'm Songbird, I can sing anything, right? Now this becomes important because we're going to show you kind of this continental drift between what happened in early soul and then what happened in later soul, okay? So the next thing I want to talk to you about, by the way, if I could, I've got some people helping me here and I would love to, okay, so we can go down here to Sam Cooke. I want to talk to you about other phenomenal soul singers. And the first one is Sam Cooke. Now, if you listen to A Change Is Gonna Come, and we've put these in the description so you can kind of check all this stuff out. You know, I was born by the river in a little tent, and just like that river, I've been running ever since, right? He's got this beautiful, round, gorgeous tone to him. And, it's been a long time coming, but I know the change is going to come. And he goes through this whole thing. You get into his story, and you're sucked into the story, and you're like, wow, I'm in a movie. Really, I'm in a movie as far as audio is concerned. Well, that is soul. It's called soul because it comes from the heart. In other words, I'm sharing my heart with you, and this is called soul. That's where it's deemed the name. He doesn't sit there and give us a bunch of gratuitous licks. All this stuff. He doesn't do that. He can. He did. It's to some degree. And when I get to Stevie Wonder, we're going to talk about what happened here. So as we go through this, guys, I want to make this clear, and I hope that as you're listening to this, that we can do both. One is we can share the soul of our hearts, and the other is we can add calisthenics to the licks and all the fun runs and riffs and melisma stuff and all that. But don't get so caught up in the melisma and the licks and the riffs and the runs that we lose sight of the soul, okay? So that's why the difference between Aretha being deemed the queen of soul and, say, Mariah being deemed, the songbird, makes that kind of difference, right? So as we go on, I want you to just check out A Change Is Gonna Come. Now, Steve Perry from the band Journey, and I've said this before, I'll say it again because I want to kind of go through a bunch of stuff here. If you look up a song called Lovin, Touchin, Squeezin, we have it in the description, you're going to notice that he copied a lot of, Sam Cooke's, licks and soul, but Steve still told the story. He did a great job, and he, what I say is he reinterpreted what Sam did, and he put it in sort of a rock vibe, right? Well, that's pretty cool, except that on the one hand, it would have been great if Steve had done his own thing in that sense, not dissing Steve, bear with me for a second. But if you can take and internalize something and represent this in a way that's totally original, and he did this in other songs and stuff, but to just blatantly copy someone's lick. For example, like I did Tennessee Whiskey, and I showed you how to break down the lick, right? Well, let me make a confession. When I did that, I didn't believe it, and what I mean by that is this. It wasn't in my heart. Now, in the case of Tennessee Whiskey, I could tell when he sang it, it's in his heart. And I was just breaking down the mechanics of something. So I want to differentiate between the mechanics and the soul, right? Now, we have a lot of stuff going on here on the screen, and I'm trying to, okay, we have Rebecca from Torres Central Valley, California, shout out. We've got Jay Lesher City from Brewing Tampa, Emmanuel from Staten Island, New York City. But we're going to stop with the shout outs, and we're going to continue now on with, so Sam Cooke was really smooth. By the way, we're going to slow this whole thing down for a second because it's a little discombobulated. We got a lot of shout-outs and other things going on, and we're working out some technical stuff, so hang in there. Let me recap something real quick. I want to regroup. We had Aretha deemed the Queen of Soul. We talked about why. I shared what I think soul is and what it isn't. Okay? Now, I want to share a funny story with you guys, and I hope you can laugh along with me, but it's pretty interesting. I have a very close guitar friend of mine who graduated from GIT, which is the Guitar Institute of Technology. And you guys may appreciate this. And for you other people out there that are conservatives, I'm gonna use exactly what he said. So if it bothers you, you are welcome to click off or continue on with this story. His name is Scott, by the way. Anyway, so Scott, I had been there the year before, and Scott had come out, and in GIT, it was a very, very prestigious, elite school for learning. And in this particular instance, people that were in the audience were like Eddie Van Halen, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani. For those of you that are guitar players out there, Eric Clapton showed up, not at this specific one, but whatever. B.B. King, like all these different guys. And they had like 36 guys that after 2 years, let me get back to the 2-year part. So I think they had like 200 people that sign up, and like the first 3 months, like 50 people drop out because it's so hard. And it's very mechanical, and it's very this or whatever. And so it was funny because at the end of the year, I think there was 88 guys left, but then only maybe 36 of them got to do their thesis on playing guitar, right? Now, you're going to love this, I hope, or you're going to sign off. All these guys did their thing, and you're just, after a while, you're like, oh, not another, guitar stuff. And you're just like, one guy broke a string, and he got so upset, he crashed his guitar on the ground. Another guy started crying because he missed a few notes. This is a traumatic experience for going through this, because it was a very tough school. Steve Travato will be a testimony to that. Steve, if you're listening, who was one of the guitar instructors there. And so Scott was of 36 guys, he was the second to the last guy out. And after a while, you're so fatigued with all this stuff and all these guys in the audience. And and you have graduates from the years before that are there and their arms are crossed going, I could do that better. So this guy, Scott, he could play anything. And he could tap better than anybody. For those of you guitar players, he could play 30-second notes better than anybody. And when he walked out, I'm sitting in the audience, and he had this 10-gallon country hat on, right? And he plays the blues like no one's business. He had this big 10-gallon, belt buckle that was just huge, and these huge boots on. And they gave you this little table to put your stuff on where you could read your music or whatever. It's like one of those old school, elementary school tables, whatever, and you put your stuff on and you read your stuff and you go through. You get 2 minutes. 2 minutes, that's it. That's all you get for all your time spent to show your thesis of what you were made of. And Scott walks out slowly, and they're going, which means time. Come on, get out here. He's just cruising. And everyone knows this guy, and he knows he can play anything. So he walks out and he goes, today I've seen a mighty vulgar display of guitar calisthenics. There's just one problem. None of you guys are going to get laid. And I'm like, as a Christian, I thought that was the funniest thing ever. He jumps on the table and he goes like this. And the whole audience goes boom, 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 boom. And he's playing 3 notes. And we just heard 35 guys play 30,000 notes. And he's playing 3 or 4 notes. And he's torturing the guitar with 3 notes. And everyone knows he can play anything as fast and better and cleaner than all those other guys. And he still is in 2 minutes. And at the end, he just goes, shh, bam! He throws the guitar on the table and it goes, it's feeding back as he walks off the stage, and he gets a standing ovation from everybody that was ready to leave because they had ear bleed from 1,000 licks, 1,000 notes. That taught me so much about soul, about what one note means more than 1,000 notes. We want to have in our repertoire 1,000 notes, but we want to know how to use those notes in a way that bolsters or lifts up the one note. And this, to me, said so much about, I had just spent, oh my gosh, my entire life learning how to play fast guitar, clean guitar, all this stuff over and over again. When one note will do, 2 notes will do if you know how to place it. One melody is way more important than all these licks. So I want to get to Marvin Gaye because we were talking about smooth singers. And prior to that, we were talking about Change is Gonna Come. What's his name? I'm sorry. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so we were talking about smooth singers. Hold on. Oh, Sam Cooke. Great, I could do this. And so I want to talk about Marvin Gaye. And sorry if I seem a little discombobulated. We have a lot of technology going on, and I'm just trying to deal with it. Marvin Gaye, if you take a song like What's Going On, and you listen to it, and he's considered one of the greatest soul singers of all time, he's not throwing a bunch of licks at you, though he has them. It's that he has a warmth to his sound, he has a story to tell, he believes it, he means it, and you can tell in everything that he did. Really, true story. That's also true of Al Green. So what we've done is we've put, I've told you guys over and over again, the proof is in the singing, the proof is in the singing. And so what I've done is I've challenged myself and my students, and we're never going to be Marvin Gaye, and I'm sorry guys to disappoint you, and we're never going to be Al Green, and I'm sorry to disappoint you, but at least certainly we could try our best to get to that level in different styles and show how we can pull this off. So we get to Al Green, Let's Stay Together, for example. What an epic piece. And by the way, one more thing. Notice how all these songs have withstood the test of time. Really, like it's not a fly-by-night, one quick, one-hit wonder, and it's in and it's out. These songs have withstood the test. Why? Because when you hear someone that's sharing their honest testimony of their heart, of their song, it resonates. well, you can tell when someone is just being mechanical about something, and it might be fun for a minute, and it's cool, you know, Gangnam Style, you know, I don't care what it is, it's not soul, but you know, it's took over the world for a minute. Is that song going to be played 20 years from now? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not going to judge that. But what I'm going to say is, so speaking of smooth again, we're talking about Al Green, Let's Stay Together. I did a cover, it's in the description, Here I Am Baby. Now, what I did for myself was I said, there's no way I can get that sweetness of Al Green's genteelness of his sound, because I'm a bigger voice than him and this and that or whatever. So I tried to combine, and that's what I was talking about, the Steve Perry thing. I tried to combine, you know, what it is that I'm good at as a singer and incorporate what I learned from him and his soul and incorporate that in song. So we have that, it's called Here I Am Baby. Now I want to get, and I also did another cover, Put a Little Love in Your Heart, that he did with Annie Lennox. I did another version of that. So if you get a chance, go through this stuff. I think you'll really appreciate it. But I want to get to heavier singers, because we talked about smooth singers. Let's talk about heavier soul singers, and I want to get to Wilson Pickett. You know, Mustang Sally, oh you better slow your Mustang down. You know, he's got this huge kind of sound. Now here was the confusing part to me, right? You ready for this? All of my rock guys back in the day laughed at me because I liked stuff like that, right? I actually like some disco too. I don't care if people think, I mean, Casey and the Sunshine Band were awesome. I was made fun of, and I just had to I was in the closet, if you know what I mean, musically. And so I had to just keep this stuff to myself. And then when I watched some Rolling Stone interviews and some other stuff, I learned that, you know, Wilson Pickett, Coverdale said, and John Fogerty said that Wilson Pickett was one of his favorite singers. And I'm thinking, well, Coverdale is one of my favorite singers, and yet one of his favorite singers is Wilson Pickett. Well, I'm just going to go straight to the source. I'll enjoy Coverdale, and I'll enjoy John Fogerty, right? But also I want to know, like, why they liked it and how it resonated with me. You listen to Fortunate Son, and you'll hear what I'm talking about the Mustang Sally and the distortion in the voice. Because people weren't doing that like that, not in that way. We just came off like the bebop era in the 60s and the psychedelic stuff. Nobody was kind of getting those big distortion things. You know, very few. Steve Marriott, there was a couple guys out there. But anyway, so you can check out my version. There's John Fogerty's version of Fortunate Son. Check out my version of it. See how I stacked up. So see how I was able to reinterpret this. Now, I want to get to a very, very controversial subject where this whole split happened. And that is this. I'm going to go to Stevie Wonder. Now, if Aretha was called the Queen of Soul, certainly Stevie could have been nominated for the King of Soul, okay? And so whenever I hear Stevie, it's just, I am not worthy. Stevie Wonder, I'm not worthy, right? But he brought in two amazing things, or one amazing thing and one thing that they both went two different directions. The first thing is that on the one hand, he brought in the riffs and all the fun stuff, but he didn't do it gratuitously. It was just in his heart. It's just the way he sang. In fact, if you listen to Sir Duke, and you go dum, and in the middle he's going bum, hey, it's like I'm going, how did you find the one, meaning the beat? How did you find the one in that? How'd you throw this stuff out? It was like James Brown kind of just throwing something out there here and there. And it just was in his soul, literally, to be able to do this stuff. So, but he inspired so many people. But on the one hand, he inspired people, which, by the way, Bruno Mars is a good example of this because he has taken Michael Jackson to a whole new level. I didn't even get to cover him in this. But on the one hand, he inspired musicianship beyond belief. And, you know, he has songs like I Wish, Superstition, Sir Duke, which I just was, anyway, Sir Duke, Higher Ground, Living for the City, all these different amazing, you know, and I'm not even scratching the surface to On New Year's Day and all, I just called to say I love you, all that stuff. That was his softer side. But here was a guy that is just owned planet Earth with soul. But what happened was people took the licks of that, and they venerated the licks above the soul. If you listen to Stevie, and you listen to I Wish, and you go through his stuff, man, guys, please, trust me on this. Go through his stuff. When you listen to it, it's like you're in a movie. You're caught up in the story. And he throws some licks around, and now that's awesome. But the soul of it is that you're really caught up in it. So I'm gonna get caught up in it. Justin Timberlake. Anyway, Chris, yeah, whatever. So, but in this case, he started a movement. And in that movement, people gravitated towards the icing of the cake rather than the cake. And that was kind of a bummer because everyone kind of just went their separate ways, and then, it started this continental drift or divide between old school soul and new school soul R&B, blah, blah, blah. So now, in fairness, I want to say, before I forget, I want to move on to Sam and Dave for a good reason. Sam and Dave, if you guys looked them up too, they were inspired. I was talking about rock guys. Sam and Dave inspired guys like Steve Marriott from Humble Pie. Like I already said, David Coverdale said that was a couple of his favorite singers. He was a very heavy singer. Hold On, I'm Coming, Soul Man. You've probably seen that. Well, as this continental drift happened, you started to see old school guys go this way, which is Chaka Khan, for example, female singer from a band called Rufus, that she went on with a great career after that. Song called Tell Me Something Good. Now, I did it as one of her many songs. I did a vocal demonstration myself because it had to do with mixed voice. And I wanted to show you guys how to get this old school sound and how to use mixed voice. Now, the tightrope that I walk is that I'm trying to show you the mechanics of something and how it works. And yet that's on the one hand, so that we can get that to work. And then on the other hand, how we need to apply this to soul and heart and meaning and inspiration. So again, I want to overemphasize this because a lot of people think, well, it's just, you're talking all about mechanics and stuff. Absolutely not. But let's take a sport. Any sport. I happen to like soccer. When you see a talented soccer player, you can bet your bottom dollar. I don't care if it's Lionel Messi. I don't care who it is. Whatever your favorite soccer player is. They started out with a talent. Now, really listen to me on this. They started out with a gift, or maybe they didn't even really have it, and they just worked hard at it, tortoise in the hare, if you guys know that story. And then they worked it and worked it and worked it, but they could only get it to a certain point until someone could come along and say, hey, look, you can do this better. I'm going to give you an example of this, and I'm going to talk about Steve Trovato, what he did for me. Actually, irritates the crap out of me, but I'm glad I did it. I used to love flat picking. Fast, super fast, 30-second note flat picking. And Steve showed me circular picking. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? I can't do that. He goes, well, you're going to have to go back to the drawing board. And I go, hold on a minute. Whoa, dude, hold on. I'm 20 years old. I've been doing this since I was 6. I'm not going back to the drawing board. He goes, well, then you won't get any better. And I said, what? What are you talking about? He goes, if you want a flat pick like these other guys over here, you have to understand and learn about circular picking. Guitar picking, and it's a way that you can get across the strings really fast so that you're not using too much energy and wasting a lot of motion to get, to pick really fast and clean. And I'm like, how long is that going to take me? He goes, 2 years. I go, 2 years? Are you kidding me? I'm going to dump everything I've learned about, my picking with my natural talent, and I'm going to have to do flat picking for 2 years? He goes, yep. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. It's up to you. So what did I do? I went back home and I just started flat picking and circular. I learned the technique and the mechanics of it. And sure enough, at about the 2-year mark, and it took a long time, it was a drag. So by the way, if anyone tells you that they're going to make you great overnight, that's a lie from the pit of hell. But can you do it in a reasonable amount of time? Yeah, absolutely. If you apply yourself and do it daily, sure. So anyway, but I look back on that now and I went, I'm so glad that I did that. It saved me. I wish someone had taught me that before, early on in my life. Well, not I'm not trying to make this a plug for Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy, but what I am going to tell you is Grandpa's been doing this a long time. So for 35 years I've been doing this. And I wish I had someone like me to go back in time to tell me, Ken, if you only do it this way, only know to do it this way, this is how, it would have got me there so much faster. I could have like, doggone, right? So, sorry, didn't mean to get off on my own little tangents, but they're just personal testimonies and stories. So Shaka Khan, amazing. But I want to get into some other guys that influenced some of the rock guys. So we talked about Sam and Dave, influencing David Coverdale, and actually also a lot of the Deep Purple guys, the band Deep Purple, were influenced by that. So Glenn Hughes, for example. But anyway, Otis Redding sitting on the dock of the bay. Now, here's kind of something interesting that happened. It was cool. When Otis Redding came out with Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, that was considered Otis soul, and Otis, everything he did was awesome. True soul, not gratuitous licks, true soul. Then all of a sudden, it started to inspire white guys like me to want to sing stuff like that. So you have Michael Bolton. And Michael Bolton, if you look at his version of Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, he takes it up higher. He was a rock guy. He was a rock guy before he became the pop guy that we all know him for. That Oprah Winfrey knows and loves him for. She's had him on her show many times. Anyway, but then you listen to his version, and it's cool. It's different. It's called Blue-Eyed Soul, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But all of a sudden, he reinterpreted that, and then he represented that art in a way that was his, like me, when I said I did the Al Green song, I took my rock side and I tried to make it some soul, and I had my own interpretation. So, and by the way, in that song in the video, we have it in the description tag, you've got Neil Schon from Journey, you got Jonathan Cain from Journey, blah, 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 blah. You got some pretty heavy hitters in there. The next thing is the Black Crowes, Too Hard to Handle. Now, I want you guys, again, this is a lot of information, but guys, promise you, take your time, do this stuff. This is called homework. This is a homework assignment. If you listen to Chris Robinson's version, and it's cool. Hey, little thing, let me like you can, because of mama, I'm sure. He's got this, swag about him. But if you listen to Otis Redding's version, the swag of the rhythm is very different. So if you listen to Chris's version, no diss on Chris, man. He's doing what I did, is taking a soul thing and applying it. But you go, hey, little thing, let me like you can, because of mama, I'm sure. Oh, now you say, right, you'll have that. You listen to Otis Redding versions. Hey, let me think it like a, hey, let me think, let me like you can, because I'm hard and now. He's got this. He's got his soul, like heart is coming out this in a way. Rhythmically, I don't know. Like I said, the Stevie Wonder thing, with Sir Duke. I don't know how in the world he did that, and he did it different every time. That's another thing too. It's one thing to rehearse a lick. As much as I love Chris Stapleton, and I'm not dissing him at all, but if you listen to Tennessee Whiskey, the lick is exactly the same. I don't know if they cut and pasted it. It sounded like they did, but it's exactly the same each time. Now, the lick does have that kind of soul, so I'm not sure if it was an engineer's thing or a producer's thing or whatever. We like the first one the best. We're going to use it all 3 times. And I've heard him do it live, and he kind of does it the same way, but he has a little bit of a difference to it. But the thing of it is if you listen to Aretha, or you listen to Stevie, or you listen to Sam, or you listen to Otis, or you listen to these guys, they don't do it the same way every time. Because they woke up that day and they weren't feeling good, or they woke up that day and they were feeling great, or maybe they had a little bit too much, or whatever that thing was. They were always doing something different. Like the band Phish. I don't know if you ever seen Phish or an older group. They would always play a different show. It was so cool. I've seen those guys so many times. Like every time I saw them, they would change up their show instead of it being like theatrical where we all do the same. Here's your mark and here's where we go. And that's the difference between true soul and let's call it contrived soul. Now I want to get to Whitney Houston because I always love, I will always love you. All the Man I Need. I'll get to that in a second. The girl had it going on, man. She did. Everything she touched turned to gold. It's a shame that she went out the way she did, but whew, man, again. No wonder that song is still one of the songs that everybody sings to grade us all on, our performances, right? Now, I did a version with one of my students, and I think it's really important as a vocal coach. If you're trying to prove something, please, guys, get your brain around this. The vocal coach should be able to sing and sing well and in a style that you like. and he should be able to demonstrate students that sing and sing well in a style that you like. So I made it a point to go out of my way, and by the way, everyone's in process, so everyone's on a different journey. And in this journey, you can't expect everyone to be an A or an A+. You've got to go, okay, how long has she been doing the program, or how long has she been singing, and, and grade it that way. It's really important because I want people to see the progression of this, not just only greatness or consummate perfection, but how we got there. In fact, in my course, we're vulnerable. We bare our souls and our heart, and you see people making mistakes. You'll see Gabriella not getting something, Gabriella Guncica, one of my students. You'll see her like being frustrated, not getting a lick, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, what's that something dance, the dance TV show, Make Me Dance, I forget what it's called. Anyway, you'll see the stars falling and knocking themselves over, whatever, and then you see the end product and you go, wow, it was a lot of hard work to get there. They just didn't open their mouth and sing. Or start dancing one day. Dance with the Stars, I guess it was called. Sorry, that's what it is. Anyway, so you see this progression, and you go, that's what it takes to become great. Really, true story. So anyway, so if you check out Whitney's version of All the Man I Need and our cover version with Alyona Yaroshina, she's from Russia, and she reached out to me. Now, it's interesting, Alyona is a fantastic singer. She started out having some issues. She actually has a degree and taught at the conservatory in Moscow in Russia, and then went, wow, there's all this stuff I never knew existed, and how I was able to get to all these different places. And we see the byproduct of that. Now, I want to get to Gabriella, because we just talked about her a second. Ruby Turner is another phenomenal R&B singer. And we did Stay With Me Baby. And if you listen, and Gabriella was so funny because she's a rock chick. She likes David Coverdale. I'm not kidding. She's a female David Coverdale who was in a band called Whitesnake. And I challenged her and I said, well, if you do that same lick over and over again, or if you can't have sensitivity in the sound, or if we can't have diversity in all the different things that we do, you're really one-dimensional. And that's cool, but I think we could really get a lot more out of you. And so we did all kinds of different things, which included soul R&B, and I'll talk about two of them in a minute. But so we did Ruby Turner's Stay With Me Baby. Check out Gabriella's version. It's in the description tag. Now, Donny Hathaway. Oh, man. I don't know what planet he came from, but it was called Planet Soul. And I've heard him live 20 times, maybe more. And every time it was different. Every time the mood was different. There was nothing rehearsed about it. Phenomenal soul singer. He did a song, I'll Love You More Than You'll Ever Know, and that was one of the songs that touched me as a rock guy, And I loved our soul R&B and disco, and, I like jazz too. I love opera, believe it or not. I love all kinds of stuff if it's good. Anyway, so I challenged myself to do my own version of I'll Love You More Than You'll Ever Know. So you can check it out in the description tag. Again, the proof is in the singing. I'm going to go back to this again. If you are looking for good information, make sure that vocal coach can sing and sing well and see if you like it. You may hate it. You go, that guy sucks, and you're out of here. Cool, no problem. Or you may say, wow, he's proving what he's saying, and he's got students that prove that what he's teaching is legitimate, and it's really making them better. And it's not just parroting something from a textbook. Let's talk about that real quick. There's a lot of good technical information out there, and I could go wah, 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 and wow you with all kinds of technical jargon. Pedagogy, vocal pedagogy. Where the rubber meets the road, which means what really matters in the end, is that can that guy really prove it? Can that girl really prove it? And are those students, are they displaying students that really prove it? So we can talk about all kinds of stuff. In fact, I've got a couple of videos coming out on this, and we've covered some of this. Let's keep going here. The staple singers, Marvin Maples. I remember hearing, respect yourself. And she's got this huge, huge voice, and I'm like, where did she come from, right? And I was laughing at myself because I'm going, actually, she's a black version, African American, whatever you politically correct thing you want to say, of a rock singer singing soul. So she's like the opposite of me. I'm a rock guy wanting to sing soul. She's a soul singer sounding like a rock guy. I kid you not. Straight up. just like Mustang Sally. It's like just like that, right? And it's cool, these concentric rings of how these things come together. But so I did a version of Respect Yourself, and I put myself out on the line, man. So you can check that out. It's in the description tag. But I want you guys to, and we're going to get to some questions, and I really want to know who your guys' favorite soul singers are. Now, we talked a little bit about Blue-Eyed Soul, and I want to circle back around to get to this. I, at one point, was in a band called Magdalene. And we did a song that was a lot like Foreigner's I Want to Know What Love Is, right? And so we were looking for a choir. And so I lived in LA, or close to LA at the time, and we were auditioning different choirs and stuff. So we went to a church called West Angeles, Church of God in Christ, West Angeles. And it was funny because it was huge. And I was there with my wife, and I think there was probably around 3,000 people in the congregation. I could be wrong, maybe 2,500. I'm a pretty good gauge of audiences because I've done a lot of touring. And I think of that service, we were the only 2 or 3 white people in the whole service. Now, I've always considered myself a soul singer, a rock guy that could sing soul. And at the time, they had a visiting choir, which was really cool. It was like, he would go, Jesus, the choir would go, Jesus, the keyboard, and he said, who built that ark? Noah. I said, who built that ark? I said, no, Noah. I said, Noah. I said, Noah, built that ark. You're like, oh, this is rocking. So I started I was trying to chime in, and what was funny, if you guys have ever been to a church service, maybe some of you haven't, normally the band is really loud and you can't hear anybody back there. Man, I was about midway after the service, and I couldn't even hear the band. Everybody behind me was so loud, I couldn't believe it. And there was this one guy next to me who started dancing in the aisles, and I sounded so white. I was as Aryan as they come, and I thought to myself, this is hilarious. I thought that I was like cool and had some soul, and I went, oh man, I'm humiliated right now. And we did hire the choir, and they did sing on the Magdalene album, and it was awesome. And you can check it out later. We'll discuss this later. But the perception of myself and these experiences have given me a lot of experience to really understand, okay, what is soul and why is it? And a lot of these guys came from tough backgrounds, man. Really. And it's really inspired them to be great. So if you're throwing yourself a pity party and you say, well, I don't come from good means and can't get vocal lessons. And no, these guys have nothing and they're great. And you're like, wow. But you're saying, well, wait a minute, Ken, you just said that it's the mechanics of this and the talent of it that makes you great. I did say that. And that's where if you get both, it's... music or singing, is 50% art and 50% mechanics. And when you combine those two, whatever you do is endless, whatever you want. And I know I'm rambling, but I was talking about Blue-Eyed Soul. So I was, thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to put myself in the Blue-Eyed Soul category. So I took on a Daryl Hall & Oates, song, and I think you guys will like it. It's called Sarah Smile. Check out in the description tag, and we put both their version and my version so you can hear it. Now, Daryl did a better job than me. I admit that, no question. Daryl's a better, more sensitive. That was more of his shtick and his thing. But I took a stab at it. What the heck? Why not? I'm leaving myself vulnerable. I'm slitting my wrist. I'm going, okay, guys, what do you think here? Right? So anyway, Mickey Thomas. Mickey Thomas was in a band called Elvin Bishop way back in the day, and then Starship, as you know, later you may or may not know. So he did a soul blues R&B piece. By the way, it's more on the country side, which was interesting because country isn't known for soul in that sense, but he combined the two because he's got a soul voice. So he did a song called Fooled Around and Fell in Love. I thought, what the heck? I'll give it a try. It's in the description tag. Check it out. Fooled Around and Fell in Love. Again, I put my money where my mouth is. The proof is in the singing. I'm going to say it one more time. If you're looking for good information, let's make sure that vocal coach themselves can prove it. Just have them prove it. They can parrot something from a textbook. We can all go read a technical manual, and we can recite it. Do we really, really, truly know and understand how that translates or articulates into actual practical application? This is extremely important. I hope you guys, if you really listen to this, you get your brain around this. So, and by the way, on a lot of the tracks, almost all the tracks that you guys hear, when I talked about Aretha Franklin, and I said that she was a great instrumentalist, guitar was my first instrument, as many of you know. And most all of these tracks that you hear, I actually played all the parts. I kid you not. I never talk about it, but from a guitar player standpoint, that's what I said about the GIT thing, is, you know, I went to a lot of guitar schools and I went to an orchestral school and all this stuff. I play all the parts. There's a couple exceptions. You know, I've got a couple buddies that come in. I'm not a good drummer. I can program drums great. I can play most anything else except for violin. By the way, what did Stravinsky say? He says, no one should be allowed to play the violin until they've mastered it. I thought that was funny. Anyway, think about that. So anyway, I want to get to Eva Cassidy. Now, she's an unsung hero, and she's white. And if you listen to the, on the description here, if you listen to Stormy Monday, by the way, I'm not trying to be white, black, blue, green. I just meant that, you know, certain people have great predispositions, or not just great advantages on what they do. So it's harder for someone, you know, like what was that movie called White Men Can't Jump, for example? Well, because we know that African Americans are built in a way that they, you know, they have a lot of times, not all the time, but have a predisposition or a better ability to do a certain task. And so that movie was pretty funny, White Men Can't Jump. Well, and the same thing, you know, white men can't sing the blues as good as as an African American, or whatever the politically correct term is. So I say that because if you listen to Eva Cassidy, I know I'm going to get castigated for this, but if you listen to Eva Cassidy, Stormy Monday, it's in the description tag. Listen to that, you would, man, you'd be like, wow, she killed it. So I decided to do that with Aliona, one of my students from Russia. And she went, I can't do that. I go, we're going to do that. She goes, I can't do that. I said, we're going to do that. And listen to her version. Listen to Eva's version. Tell us how we stacked up. Allie killed it. She did a great job. She worked hard at it. She deserves all the kudos. It's not because I'm so great. She was willing to take really hard to come by information and put in the time to do this. Roberta Flack and the Fugees. So Lauryn Hill, she was also just a phenomenal soul singer. And I don't, guys, if I missed some of your favorite soul singers, and I want you guys to share with me what some of them are, I apologize, but I've tried to get a storyline to show you how this food chain worked here. But so Roberta Flack did a amazing version of a song that we covered that Lauryn Hill did in the Fugees. And Killing Me Softly is the name of the song. So if you listen to the Lauryn Hill version, we're not allowed to post the Roberta Flack version. It's been blackballed from YouTube, so we're not allowed to post that version. But we can post our version, so we decided to post the Lauryn Hill version, which she did a killer job. And then we reduplicated that version as a tutorial with both Gabriella and Aliona. So we had two different students doing this, trying, you know, both saying they couldn't do it, and they just killed it. So check it out when you can. Now, Ken Tamplin Academy, the proofs in the singing. I know I keep saying this over and over again, but I'm going to say it one more time. I'm going to open this up for questions. When you see, let me say this another way. If you go to an instructor, and GIT was a good example of this, every instructor could play their butts off and intimidated the crap out of you. I'm not kidding, to the point where you wanted to go home and smash your guitar. Every single one of them. And I talk about Steve Travato, and there's other great guys in there. Holy cow. You would go home spanked so hard, you just wanted to get that much of the information, and then you'd go woodshed, and you'd go through this over and over again. I don't know why it is that in singing, the discipline is that the coach doesn't have to sing, they don't have to display students singing, they can parrot stuff from a textbook, and then all of a sudden they get 1 million views on YouTube or whatever it is. It just blows my mind. It's up to you guys to decide where you want to get your information from, but I want to get to some questions. Thank you for my long-winded walk Hall of Fame through soul and R&B, and I know there's so much more we could have covered, but it was just a quick little glance over you. So David N says, I'm having a hard time with connecting to song lyrics. I can sing songs technically correct, but it doesn't sound like I mean it. How can I train? That is an awesome question, David. You know what I do before I do the technical side of it? I just spit it out. And it's like in my mind, what I do is I say to myself, I memorized the story in my heart. And okay, let me give you kind of an interesting example of this. You know the song, "Hey, little girl, is your daddy home? Did it go ahead and leave you all alone? I got a bad design, oh, my heart's on fire," Bruce Springsteen. I heard a funny story about that. And I happen to know a lot of the engineers that worked on it, and I don't want to go into details of this. But what was funny was they'd already packed up, and they were done with that album. And there's another really famous guy that is a song plugger. And he came into the studio as the drums were being loaded and everything's going. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning. In fact, listen to the song, "My Heart's on Fire" by Bruce Springsteen. And if that's the name of it, forgot. And they said, "No, you got to listen to this." Or he said, "You got to listen to this." And he was so well known that the producer said, "Oh, gosh." You know, and he put it on, the demo version. And Bruce listened to it. And Bruce said, "Oh." And he got out his acoustic and he started working it up and he started listening again and drank some coffee. And in about an hour and a half later, they called the whole band back. And they put everybody back and remiked everything and whatever. And he went in and Bruce sang that with so much passion, so much believability, that he owned it. He just owned it. Now, whether you like the song or you don't like the lyrics of it or not, whatever, it doesn't matter. It became the #1 song in the album, right? Kind of interesting. So when we think about how we own a piece of music is we internalize it. We really think about the story more than about the mechanics. The mechanics come along for the ride. That's what we just talked about, soul. And we put ourselves in the first person of that, is it first person? Forget. Is it second person, first person? But anyway, put ourselves in the story, and then we just do this over and over with repetition, and we don't, like a robot, mindlessly just sing notes on a page and have them correct. We really think about it like we put ourselves in the movie. We're in the movie. We're an actor in that sense, but an actor that is really good, that lives the part and breathes the part. So next question, here we go. And I know we're coming close on time, so I want to get to as many of these as we can. How about Elvis Presley's soul music? Look, Elvis should have been listed in the Soul Hall of Fame also. Remember what I said about country music not being having a lot of soul? Elvis. Oh my gosh, he is another one. In fact, I did a version of, I did an Elvis tune. I forgot I'd done so much music. Anyway, I tried, it's so funny that you should mention that. Okay, let's slow this whole thing down for a second. There was a very famous, it was called Sons of Apollo, there was a famous TV show, and I'll think of it. I did a lot of stuff for film and television. And oftentimes they want it to sound exactly like the original. And so, Sons of something, I wish I can remember the name of it. I'll think of it later. I'll try to post it later if I can. Anyway, so they wanted me to do, I can't even remember the name of the Elvis piece. Sorry, just washed my brain. I can't do a thing with it. I did an Elvis piece. And it was really tender. And I remember hearing his version, trying to copy it again, da-da-da-da-da. And then finally I started listening to the lyric and I'm going, oh, can't help falling in love. That's what it is. Can't help falling in love. I can't help falling in love with you. Shall I stay? And I'm listening to this tender moment where I don't want to gross you guys out or anything, but I pictured myself with them in bedroom talk, and he's singing this to her, not so much sexually, but he means it, and he's wrestling with an issue. Like, I feel it's a sin, I don't know, but I can't help myself, and he's singing this to her. He believed it, man. That was just like, wow. So it took me 2 days of 3 hours a day just trying to cop the vibe of that thing and making that thing sound right. Go back and listen to it. See how I stacked up. That's true for Neil Diamond too, by the way. I did a couple Neil Diamond tunes, but look at the last one I did, Sweet Caroline. Listen to my version of Sweet Caroline. Listen to Neil's version of Sweet Caroline. Very hard to match that stuff. I had to put myself in the moment of meeting this girl and blah, 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 and really have that movie going in my mind, and the technical stuff came along for the ride. Okay, next one. Joe Da Silva, Shaka influencing, absolutely. But Whitney already said that. Yeah, did you know that? Maybe you did or didn't. Whitney had already said that Shaka was a big influence of her. Shaka, Aretha, and what's her name? The other big gospel soul singer. Gosh, guys, I just washed my brain and I can't do a thing with it. I'm not kidding. I usually have good recall with this stuff. Starts with an M. Her name is, I'll get to it in a minute, like I've been able to remember this stuff. But the answer was yes, absolutely. So Carry Me Home, excuse me. Maybe they didn't do it the same because they were under the influence of the Spirit, but so many of them came out of the church. That's true. That's absolutely true. I agree with that. So let's see here. We've got Mark Terrible. Is that your real name? That's awesome if it is. Are you terribly good at something? Soul has nothing to do with color. If you got, absolutely. Oh, no, please, Mark, you're absolutely right. In fact, let me make a point of that. Go look up a gospel quartet guy named Jake Hess. He just recently passed here a couple years ago. Oh my gosh, like that's my point. But it's different soul. It's not the same kind of soul. Everyone has a different stylistic, the way they speak is stylistically different. So I couldn't agree with you more, Mark, and thank you for the comment. Next, favorite soul singers. Billy Ocean, great. Temptations, can't beat that. Phoebe Snow, of course. James Morrison. Look, guys, Luther Vandross, oh my gosh, okay, stop the madness. Stop the madness. And Billie Holiday, you know. Okay, Luther. I'm sorry I didn't get to you. I am not worthy. I can go down through. I already said Stevie Wonder, but listen to Dance with My Father Again. It's a more recent Luther song. All his other stuff is great. And Luther is older. I want you to listen to Dance with My Father Again. You literally will start crying. You're literally dancing with his dad that died, and you're experiencing his story in such a way that he could care less about anything other than just sharing his heart. And that is the point of soul. When I talk about the technical side of it, is I'm saying you can take and expand that so that you have a larger repertoire of how you can share that soul in a way that you might be limited if you don't. But let's make this more about soul than the technicality of it, because that's where I'm going with it. Of course, Billie Holiday. I mean, again, you know, it's funny because, you know, Stevie, like in Sir Duke, you know, talking about, you know, Duke Ellington. That's where the song comes from, and he mentions, you know, he mentions different soul singers. Anita Baker, of course, Peep and Bryce, awesome, absolutely. Bob Hatfield, Righteous Brothers. Sorry I missed you, Bob. What was I thinking? You know, another amazing, talented guy. So for later, I got some shout outs I'm going to do in a minute. But we're going to wind this down. We got a couple of minutes. If you guys have questions, even if we didn't get to them this time, ask me some questions. And if we want to talk about it technically, you want to talk about soul, just that side of it, just the heart of it, throw them in here. And we'll pick those up later so that we can answer them on the next round. So our next webinar is going to be this coming Saturday. And it's a surprise what we're going to talk about. I'll let you guys know. But put those questions down so I can answer them. That's why I'm here. Okay? So we're going to wind this down with some shout outs. Got Birmingham, UK, San Diego, Long Island, New York, Texas, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Madrid. All right. Was there about 2 years ago. Canary Islands, almost went there. Central Valley, California, been to most all these other places. Never been to Sydney, Staten Island, Poland, Springfield, Massachusetts, Chile, London, UK. I've been to almost every single one of these places. Brazil, Little Rock, Philippines, Argentina, Vienna, Amsterdam. So, all right, I'm going to close with saying this. When in doubt, if you have a question about something for yourself, like when you're questioning yourself, this is really, really important. When I was growing up, my cousin is Sammy Hagar, as you know, and it's not meant to say, I'm not trying to use that as a, gee, my cousin Sammy Hagar. But I looked up to him as an idol. And I looked up to Lou Gramm as an idol. And I looked up to Glenn Hughes as an idol, and all these different guys. And I mimicked, and I tried to sound just like them. Now, a lot of people say you shouldn't try to sound like anybody. You should try to sound like yourself. And I've said this before. It's, you know, How to Sing series. I talk about this all the time. When we can get to the level that we can sing like someone that we love, and we can represent that in a way, like we just talked about all the different artists that have done that. In fact, when we go all the way back to Aretha, she did a lot of cover songs, but she owned it and did it in a different way. She did it Aretha style. Once we get a large repertoire of tools in our toolbox, we can represent this art and we can come up with our own art and do these other things. But we have to have a starting point. And we have to have a point where we internalize this. So if you think your voice sucks, I thought my voice absolutely sucked horribly when I was 14, 15, 16, 17. It was a joke. But I worked on it, and I worked on it, and I did both sides. I did the soul side, meaning, you know, what the heart was, not necessarily R&B. Oh, by the way, I missed a whole part to this whole thing. I talked about old school stuff. Okay, guys, I'm going over time. Sorry about that. I'm not going to cover a lot of this, but I covered it briefly in the description of the old school and new school. We can't be so preoccupied with the technicality of something that the licks overtake the story or the heart or the intent of the song. And I'm not going to mention names because that'd be lame, but in new R&B, when I talked about the continental divide between Stevie Wonder and, you know, how everyone just sort of copied his licks and just went on and on and on. It was all about the lick because they thought the lick was cool. It's important to annotate that when that continental divide happened, that most people gravitated towards, you know, I'm going to call it the Justin Bieber licks or, you know, wherever that is, right? And there's a lot of artists out there. He's far from one of them, but, you know, only one. And I'm not bagging on him. I'm just saying, you know, that is the case. So most of new school R&B has gone towards worrying more about the calisthenics of the lick and how we can incorporate that into the music. And all new R&B artists are guilty of this. But I can see why. Because if everyone's doing it, then I've got to beat the next guy, and I've got to come up with the biggest lick, and I've got to do this. And I don't care what nationality you are. This is happening straight across the board, okay? So what I'm trying to say is, guys, let's get the story and the heart and the intent out, and let's go back to this guy Scott, where he can kill it with 3 notes, but then can throw a couple flash notes in there in between, right, on guitar, so that it makes sense, and then we bring, when those licks happen, they actually accentuate the story and the heart and the intent, not distract from it and draw attention to yourself, trying to show everybody how awesome you are as a singer. It's not worthy. Let's get back to the heart of this. Otherwise, if you ever do get a #1 single, it'll be around for about 6 months, maybe a year if you're lucky, and it will not have the timelessness of some of the artists that we mentioned. Okay? Thank you guys for joining me. God bless you guys, and until next time, peace out.